She thought she married the man of her dreams, until their honeymoon revealed the monster he'd been hiding all along. Mikaela Torres grew up in a modest neighborhood in Quezon City, surrounded by a supportive family that admired her dedication to becoming a nurse. She worked long shifts at a local hospital, often feeling exhausted but fulfilled. During her free time, she enjoyed browsing travel pages online, imagining places she hoped to visit one day. It was in one of those online groups that she first encountered Daniel Brooks, a mechanic from Arizona who shared photos of his cross-country road trips. He commented politely on one of her posts, and from there, their connection slowly formed. What began as casual online interaction gradually shifted into longer exchanges that stretched late into the night. Daniel seemed gentle, patient, and genuinely interested in Mikaela's life. He asked about her work, her dreams, and her family, carefully building trust. Mikaela, who had experienced several failed relationships in the past, felt comforted by Daniel's steady attention. His quiet personality made her believe he was dependable, and she admired his simple lifestyle in Arizona. After several months, Daniel visited the Philippines for the first time. Their meeting felt natural, and Mikaela saw him as someone who respected her deeply. Her family welcomed him with warmth, impressed by his calm behavior and soft-spoken nature. No one noticed anything unusual. Over the next 2 years, Daniel visited regularly. Each time, the bond between them seemed stronger. Mikaela believed she had finally found someone who would support her dreams and offer the stability she longed for. Daniel eventually proposed during a quiet dinner at a seaside restaurant in Manila. Mikaela accepted with overwhelming joy. Their wedding was small and intimate, attended only by close family and friends. Everyone agreed that the couple appeared perfect together, unaware of the subtle shadows already forming beneath Daniel's careful smiles. Mikaela and Daniel chose Palawan for their honeymoon because Mikaela had always dreamed of visiting its calm beaches and clear waters. After months of planning and saving, the trip felt like the perfect way to begin their life together. When they arrived, the resort welcomed them with woven leis, cold drinks, and a view of the shoreline that looked almost unreal. Mikaela immediately felt a wave of joy, hoping the peaceful environment would give both of them a fresh start as newlyweds. Staff member Ramon Delos Reyes checked them in and later recalled how excited Mikaela looked while exploring the lobby, taking photos, and admiring the ocean just beyond the glass doors. Daniel, however, seemed more reserved. At first, Mikaela didn't mind, believing he was simply tired from the long flight. They settled into their beachfront room, where Mikaela unpacked with bright energy, planning all the activities they could do together. She posted cheerful updates on social media, eager to share the happiness she felt. But Daniel stayed quiet, often staring out toward the beach instead of engaging with her plans. He walked behind her at the resort, observing everything and everyone around them with an intensity that others found unusual. Ramon later remembered that Daniel's eyes followed Mikaela constantly, as though he feared she might slip away. Though he never raised his voice or acted aggressively, there was a tension in his posture that didn't match the beauty of their surroundings. Mikaela, still hopeful, tried to lighten the mood by encouraging him to relax and enjoy the trip. She believed the honeymoon would help them bond even more deeply. But while she embraced the peaceful atmosphere, Daniel's mind was already drifting toward darker thoughts he never shared, setting the stage for the troubles that would soon follow. By the 3rd day of their honeymoon, Mikaela began noticing subtle changes in Daniel's behavior. At first, she assumed he was simply adjusting to the unfamiliar environment. But as the hours passed, his mood grew heavier, creating an invisible distance between them. He stopped smiling in photos, avoided eye contact with strangers, and reacted stiffly whenever someone approached Mikaela, even for normal interactions. What had started as quiet observation slowly shifted into an uneasy watchfulness that made Mikaela feel uncertain, though she tried to hide her concern. Whenever they walked through the resort, Daniel stayed close behind her, as if monitoring every move. During meals, he rarely spoke and instead scanned the room, evaluating the people around them. Mikaela attempted to ignore the tension, hoping it would fade with time. She convinced herself that travel fatigue or cultural differences might be affecting him. Yet the atmosphere in their room reflected something deeper. Housekeeping staff like Clarice Mendez later recalled a noticeable heaviness whenever they stepped inside, describing it as a feeling that arguments lingered in the walls even if none were heard. Mikaela continued planning activities, hoping to brighten Daniel's mood. She suggested island hopping, snorkeling, and even a simple walk at sunset, but Daniel rejected most ideas without explanation. He seemed preoccupied, lost in thoughts he refused to share. His silence was not peaceful, it carried suspicion and unease. When Mikaela interacted with resort employees or asked questions about tour packages, Daniel's expression tightened in ways she couldn't understand. Though Mikaela tried to remain patient, a quiet fear began forming in her mind. She sensed a shift she couldn't identify, as if the person she married was slowly fading behind a colder version of himself. The honeymoon she imagined was slipping away, replaced by an unsettling change she could not yet explain. Daniel's growing unease reached a new level when Mikaela approached Jomar Santos, a local tour guide, to ask about snorkeling lessons. The conversation was brief and harmless, focused only on schedules and safety instructions, but Daniel watched from a distance with rising discomfort. In his mind, the simple exchange began twisting into something threatening. He interpreted Mikaela's friendly curiosity as disrespect, convincing himself that she was giving attention to another man. What lasted only moments for her became an obsession for him, replaying in his thoughts long after they walked away. Mikaela noticed Daniel's unusually rigid posture but tried to pretend nothing was wrong. She sensed irritation, yet she hoped it would dissolve once they continued their day. Instead, the tension deepened. Daniel grew quieter with every hour. His shoulders tightened, his steps became shorter, and his eyes narrowed whenever anyone spoke to Mikaela, even in polite, professional ways. The warm atmosphere of the resort felt colder each time he misinterpreted an innocent interaction. Jomar, who guided many couples daily, found Daniel's reactions puzzling. He later recalled that Daniel stood stiffly nearby and watched every movement, as if protecting something fragile yet reacting to imagined threats. Mikaela remained unaware of how deeply Daniel's jealousy had rooted itself. She believed he was simply uncomfortable or shy around strangers. She continued trying to involve him in activities, hoping to ease whatever he was feeling. But Daniel's thoughts were no longer grounded in reality. He began analyzing her tone, her gestures, and even her smiles, searching for signs that confirmed the conclusions he had already formed in his mind. Every detail added pressure to his growing paranoia. Instead of communicating, he allowed the jealousy to grow quietly, forming a dangerous mindset that would soon push him past a point he couldn't reverse. On the fifth night of their honeymoon, the quiet tension that had been building between Mikaela and Daniel finally reached its breaking point. They had returned to their room after a simple dinner by the beach. The evening breeze had been calm, and the walk back to the resort should have been peaceful, but Daniel's mood remained dark. He walked behind Mikaela in silence, trapped in the jealous thoughts he had been nurturing for days. Every harmless moment, from the tour guide's friendly smile to the resort staff greeting Mikaela, had collected in his mind like fuel waiting for a spark. Inside the room, the atmosphere felt heavier than ever. Mikaela tried to distract herself by organizing their things and preparing for bed, still hoping Daniel's mood would improve on its own. But Daniel's mind was already overwhelmed. His thoughts spiraled through suspicion, insecurity, and imagined betrayal. He interpreted Mikaela's quiet movements as proof that she had grown distant. Small actions, like placing her phone on the table or brushing her hair, triggered him in ways that made no sense to anyone but him. Investigators would later piece together the next moments through physical evidence and the accounts of guests nearby. It appeared that Daniel confronted Mikaela in a sudden burst of emotion. There was no warning, no chance for her to understand what was happening. The argument escalated quickly, fueled by Daniel's unchecked rage and paranoia. Within minutes, the situation turned violent. Guests staying in the adjacent rooms reported hearing a loud thud and hurried footsteps, which prompted Clarice Mendez, who was working nearby, to alert security. When Officer Edmund Valdez arrived and entered the room, Mikaela lay unresponsive on the floor while Daniel stood nearby, frozen in a strange, unsettling calm. The night that began with a quiet walk had ended in irreversible tragedy. Daniel's reaction after the incident immediately raised concerns among the authorities and resort staff. When security and Officer Edmund Valdez entered the room, they expected to see panic or shock from a husband who had just witnessed his wife collapse. Instead, Daniel appeared strangely composed. His face showed neither confusion nor fear, it showed an unsettling calm that did not fit the situation. He avoided looking at Mikaela and immediately insisted she had slipped, repeating the explanation with rigid confidence. Officer Valdez noticed details Daniel seemed unaware of. Certain items in the room were scattered in ways that didn't match an accidental fall. The marks on Daniel's clothing suggested contact that didn't align with his version of events. While Daniel spoke quickly and firmly, his words felt carefully controlled, almost rehearsed. Valdez quietly stepped back, signaling for medical assistance and support while keeping Daniel within sight. Detective Liza Mercado arrived shortly afterward. Her experience allowed her to read subtle behaviors, and Daniel stood out immediately. His arms remained crossed, his breathing steady, and he showed no desire to approach or assist Mikaela. His emotional absence was impossible to ignore. Mercado observed the room, noting small but significant clues that contradicted the clean, simple story Daniel tried to present. Resort staff added more uncertainty. Clarice Mendez reported hearing a loud, heavy thud before security was called, contradicting Daniel's calm description of events. Every new detail deepened the suspicion surrounding him. As investigators continued their assessment, Daniel stayed unerringly composed. His behavior, instead of easing doubts, created more questions. The scene no longer resembled an accident. It looked like the aftermath of something deliberate, something Daniel was trying hard to conceal. Detective Liza Mercado wasted no time securing the room and beginning a full investigation. She instructed officers to photograph every detail before anything was touched. The resort suite, once meant for a peaceful honeymoon, transformed into a controlled crime scene. The scattered objects, faint marks on the floor, and the disrupted arrangement of items created a silent but telling story. Nothing matched Daniel's account of a simple accident. Detective Mercado's experience allowed her to sense when a narrative was being shaped rather than recalled, and Daniel's explanation already felt rehearsed. While forensic technicians inspected the room, Mercado collected statements from resort staff. Ramon Delos Reyes described Daniel's behavior throughout the visit, emphasizing the tense way he observed Mikaela during their stay. Clarice Mendez mentioned hearing a heavy thud shortly before security was called, contradicting Daniel's claim of a quiet, sudden fall. Both accounts supported the growing suspicion that something had gone terribly wrong long before the incident. Security camera footage added another layer of clarity. In clips from earlier that evening, Daniel appeared agitated and withdrawn, walking several steps behind Mikaela with a stern expression. Mikaela, on the other hand, seemed calm and unaware of the tension shadowing her. Footage from the hallway showed no evidence of an accident outside the room, further narrowing the focus to the confrontation inside. Forensic examiner Carlo Ibanez spent hours evaluating the scene. His initial assessment indicated patterns inconsistent with a slip or accidental impact. The position of Mikaela's body, the condition of her surroundings, and faint signs of struggle pointed to a more forceful event. As evidence stacked up, the version Daniel tried to present crumbled quickly. By the end of the night, investigators no longer viewed him as a grieving husband but as the prime suspect in Mikaela's death. Investigators widened their search beyond the resort and turned their focus to Daniel Brooks' past, hoping to understand what triggered the sudden violence. Detective Liza Mercado coordinated with authorities in Arizona to gather background information. What came back painted a troubling picture. While Daniel had no criminal convictions, there were multiple records of domestic disputes, emotional instability, and wellness checks requested by neighbors. These incidents hinted at deeper issues he had managed to hide from Mikaela. His father, Henry Brooks, provided more insight when questioned. He explained that Daniel had struggled with uncontrollable jealousy since he was young. Henry recalled past relationships where Daniel became convinced his partners were unfaithful, even without evidence. Arguments would escalate quickly, fueled by his insecurities. The family had encouraged him to seek professional help, but Daniel always refused, insisting he was capable of managing his emotions on his own. The most revealing information came from Marcy Brooks, Daniel's former partner. She described how their relationship deteriorated because of Daniel's obsessive behavior. Simple interactions, such as greeting a coworker or asking someone for directions, would trigger long periods of silent anger. Marcy said Daniel frequently watched her, analyzing gestures and expressions as if searching for proof of betrayal. Though she was never physically harmed, she ended the relationship out of fear that his jealousy might one day push him too far. The pattern matched Daniel's behavior during the honeymoon, proving that Mikaela had unknowingly stepped into a cycle long established. His past provided a clear motive and explained the emotional collapse that had taken place in Palawan. The investigation now had a solid psychological foundation, showing that the tragedy was not sudden, but the result of years of unchecked and escalating paranoia. When investigators finally confronted Daniel with the full collection of evidence, the careful story he had tried to maintain began to collapse. Detective Liza Mercado presented the conflicting witness statements, the security footage, and the forensic findings, each piece stripping away another layer of his version of events. Daniel initially tried to repeat his claim that Mikaela had slipped, but his voice lacked the confidence he displayed earlier. The weight of the truth pressed heavily on him as the reality of the situation grew impossible to deny. Forensic examiner Carlo Ibanez's assessment carried significant influence. He explained that the markings around the room, along with the physical signs on Mikaela, did not align with Daniel's account. Instead, the pattern suggested a sudden, forceful confrontation. The silence in the room during the presentation of evidence was thick, broken only by Daniel's uneven breathing. Detectives watched him closely as his composure slowly cracked. Daniel's confession did not come in a dramatic burst but rather a quiet unraveling. He admitted that jealousy had consumed him that night. In his mind, he believed Mikaela no longer wanted him, and the conversation with the tour guide had triggered overwhelming feelings he couldn't control. He described how the thoughts had built over days, feeding on small moments he misinterpreted. Though he insisted he never intended to harm her, he acknowledged that his emotions had pushed him into a blind rage. Detective Mercado noted every word, recognizing that the confession aligned with the psychological pattern the investigation had uncovered. Daniel's admission confirmed what evidence had already revealed: the event was not an accident but a consequence of deep, unmanaged paranoia. His final statements removed any remaining doubt, turning suspicion into undeniable truth and marking the formal turning point in the case against him. Daniel Brooks faced trial in the Philippines, where the evidence gathered by investigators created a clear and undeniable picture of what happened during the honeymoon. The court reviewed witness accounts, forensic findings, and Daniel's own confession. His calm behavior after the incident became one of the strongest indicators of guilt, showing a disturbing detachment from the tragedy he caused. After several weeks of hearings, the judge delivered the verdict. Daniel was found guilty of homicide and sentenced to a lengthy prison term, ensuring he would spend many years behind bars. The ruling offered some sense of justice, but it could never erase the loss experienced by Mikaela's family. Back in Quezon City, her mother Elena Torres and sister Rosario organized a memorial that reflected Mikaela's gentle, hardworking nature. Friends, co-workers, and neighbors attended, sharing stories of her kindness, determination, and the dreams she never had the chance to pursue. The ceremony was quiet but filled with emotion. Many struggled to understand how a woman so full of hope could fall victim to such a tragedy during what should have been the happiest time of her life. Her family found comfort in the support around them, but the pain lingered like a shadow they would carry forward. The story spread quickly online, especially among Filipino communities both local and abroad. People reacted strongly to the case, seeing it as a reminder of the hidden dangers behind controlling behaviors and suppressed jealousy. Advocacy groups used the incident to raise awareness about emotional abuse and the importance of recognizing early warning signs in relationships. Mikaela's story became more than a crime, it became a cautionary tale shared across social media, encouraging others to trust their instincts and seek help when something feels wrong. Though her life ended tragically, her legacy continued to protect and inform others.